bringing you everything from the sensually sublime to the hardcore subjects guaranteed to make you cringe, blush, and maybe even toss your cookies. The National Organization for Sensual Safety presents new and safe ways to play inside the bedroom and out. Because if you don't know what you're doing, things can go terribly wrong. This is the only BDSM and kink safety show for people who never want their sexual exploration to end.
Hi, I am Anne, back with you today, and we are talking about a play that is probably something new to the listeners out there. If it's not new, you will definitely learn some new things because you're going to hear about interrogation play from Redmagus' perspective. We have Redmagus with us here on the line today, and we are discussing, again, interrogation play. He has been involved in BDSM for formally 20 years and informally another 10 before that, and practicing altogether as a kinkster for 30 years. And he feels just now, after 30 years, that he might be starting to get it right, which tells you how serious he takes it. His interests include bondage, pain play, tickling, mental play, and interrogation scenes. And Redmagus, that is a mouthful right there. We could spend hours sharing about it. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started doing this form of play, BDSM and then specifically interrogation?
BDSM, I got started way back. I tied up my first when I was 15 years, and I'm now in my 50s. So I've been doing this for a while. I don't think I really started to learn about it as opposed to just fooling around with it until I encountered the Southern California kink community about 25 years ago, roughly. And that's when I was able to start being with other people who have been doing this a lot longer than I had. That's when I really began to learn about it. Of course, back then, back in the old days, we didn't have the internet, and there were actually darn few books about it. So most of this was stuff that I learned on my own initially, and then, as I said, began connecting with people who knew more and could teach me more. And I think that's when I really started to learn it. Interrogation play, let's see, I don't know if I can remember my first interrogation scene. It's kind of sad. I would guess that I didn't call it interrogation play per se when I first started doing it. It was more role play at that time. And I tend personally to make a distinction between role play and an interrogation scene. Not everyone does.
Okay.
I hesitate to.
If you wouldn't mind, I'm going to stop you for a couple of reasons. First of all, role play is probably a new term to a lot of people, so I want to explain that for a second. But it was interesting. I was asking him about his kinky play and about his family. And so you're married but no children, correct?
That's correct.
And it made me think about how sometimes kids can get in the way of time if you're going to do this kind of play. So you have a really good, you're really fortunate in your position there with just you and your wife. Now, does she engage with you at all?
Yes, she does. We're polyamorous, so we both play with other people.
Okay, terrific. Okay, so we can talk about that later. There's so much to talk about. But to go back to what you were saying, the difference between role play and interrogation play, and do you think you could kind of lay out the differences for people that might not be familiar with those terms?
Okay, I'm going to set myself up here because people are so fussy about their definitions in BDSM, and things are often fuzzy on the edges. Role play, in the classic sense, is essentially a type of acting. It's people, well, it's not just a type of acting, it is acting. It's people taking roles in an interaction between them that are different in some major way from the way they actually are. The classic probably role play is teacher-student or some sort of naughty schoolboy game, doctor-patient, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in play like that, it's clearly understood by the participants that, for example, the person who's playing the doctor is not really a doctor. He's not actually giving medical advice, and he's not doing things that a real doctor would ordinarily do. This is a role that each partner is taking because it turns them on to fantasize about that kind of thing.
And it's such a good definition. Great definition.
It's a sort of active fantasy. Now, the thing is, with role play, it's not that cut and dried all the time. Very often in a scene, unless the part that someone is playing is just so completely outside themselves that they just can't get into it in a literal sense, oftentimes they do. They begin to identify with the role, and this is something that actors will report experiencing also. It's not just, Tom Cruise isn't just playing Ethan Hunt. Sometimes he feels like Ethan Hunt.
If I can just interrupt, that actually, you're starting to answer one of my questions I've been most curious about, which I'm sure you're going to be talking about. But it seems that when you have a scene like interrogation scene with someone and it's pre-planned or they know it's going to happen, I do wonder how you keep the heightened excitement during that when you're both kind of playing a role.
Well, there are ways to do that. The easiest way, the most straightforward way, is to actually give them something that they don't want to give up. Or
really?
That, yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be their social security number, but it could be, well, the motivation for keeping it secret can be varied. It can be something that they personally do not want to admit or that they don't want to say about themselves. Or it could just be a sense of stubbornness and competition. They don't want to give it up because that's a type of surrender. And it's very likely in a case like that the surrender is what they're looking for. But if they just do it without being brought to the edge and made to do it, it loses what they're looking for there. It's not surrender at that point. It's just playing along.
Wow. So do they go into this prepared to surrender? I mean, they need that surrender, you said? That was a good comment.
It can be. I mean, okay, there's so many different ways to do this. Let me kind of classify interrogation scenes.
Okay.
One way to chop this up, to chop this pie up and look at it, is to talk about a timed scene versus an untimed scene. In a timed scene, you have a certain amount of a pre-agreed upon time limit. If the interrogator can't get the information that he or she is looking for within that time limit, the scene ends.
Okay.
And then you also have untimed scenes, in which case they go on until either one partner gives up, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the interrogatee. Sometimes the interrogator reaches a point where he or she says, "I'm sorry, I just can't go past this.
Forget it. I can't do it anymore."
You have outlasted me. I cannot do this.
Now, do you go into the scene? Do they know what they're going to be surrendering, or is this a surprise, or is it always different?
That's the other way to chop it up.
Okay, this is so exciting. I just want to say.
Sometimes there is actual information that the interrogator is trying to get. Sometimes there isn't.
And does the person know what information you're trying to get before the scene starts, or when they're going in, like, let's say we're going to do this next week if it's a pre-planned thing? Do I know what you're trying to get from me, or not until that moment?
They can. They often do, but they don't have to.
Okay. Anything goes is what you're saying. However the two people want to put it together.
Anything goes, but it does have to be negotiated. I mean, if you're going to do a free-form, untimed scene where the interrogation subject doesn't know in advance what information they're going to be asked for, you can do that. Okay. But they should know going in that that's what they're doing.
Okay, so since you and I have both been in this lifestyle for quite a while, and it's common for me to jump ahead without knowing we have new listeners here. Maybe if you, I want to hear about your favorite scene, but if you could also describe about negotiation and what that is when two people go in to do something like this.
Well, back when I was first learning this, I mentioned I started really learning it as opposed to just playing with it back about 25 years ago in Los Angeles. One of the first people that I talked to about this told me that BDSM is one of the only forms of sexuality where everybody knows how the date's going to end before it starts.
Would you agree with that after
Yes.
so many years?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
Well, for example, let's say I'm on FetLife and I get to talking to someone and she and I both decide that it would be fun to get together. We've never met each other. We don't know each other from Adam.
This is an online, by the way, FetLife.com is a free commercial here, is an online program, much like Facebook, but I would call it the kinky Facebook, where people meet that like to do things like interrogation scenes. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
This probably isn't even going to start happening until this other person and I have been corresponding online for some little while. But once we get to the point that we would like to meet each other, we arrange to meet in some public place, and one of the first things we nail down is, are we meeting to talk or are we meeting to play?
Good, that's good.
There isn't going to be a surprise here. I'm not going to walk into the restaurant and sit there talking to her for half an hour and then say, okay, let's go to the hotel.
Good. So expectations are known clearly up front. Good.
If I do that, she would be entirely within her rights to say, I'm sorry, I don't want to do this anymore, and leave. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, personally, I would say we're meeting to talk, at least the first time. Mm-hmm. But when we meet to play, whenever that is, I'm going to talk with her ideally on the phone, in person, by email, whatever method needs to be done, and figure out what is her past experience, what is she interested in, what sorts of fantasies does she have. And then I'm not just doing this to interview her. I'm listening to what she's saying, and I'm seeing how it meshes with me. It's what I call kink compatibility. That's what a lot of people call kink compatibility.
And aren't you also looking for those buttons you can push as well to have a favorable scene if you do decide to play together?
As a top, yes. I'm listening as a top. I'm listening for things that create a little catch in her voice, or that make her blush, or that she wants to talk about but has a little bit of trouble getting there with it.
Okay.
These are all things that are going to indicate an interest there, and also possibly indicate a nervousness or problem that I might need to look for.
Good. Okay. I do want to just, for our listeners' sake, explain that a top is, there's usually, always in a scene, there's a top and a bottom, and you may have heard the terms dominant, submissive, and so, Redmagus, you take that position as a top, and do you want to define that just really quickly?
Well, if you're a sports fan, you could also call it pitcher and catcher.
Okay, perfect.
The top is the person in the power exchange who has most of the overt control in a scene. I say overt because bottoms have a good deal of control as well over the direction the scene goes. They do it based on how they respond to things and, of course, based on their safe word. Right.
Okay. Good. Okay, let's go on. Sorry, I kind of detoured a little bit there.
Oh, no, quite all right. It's important stuff to talk about, and all of this is kind of meshed together. It's a big tangled ball of spaghetti. Where were we?
We were meeting the bottom, and you were